The dinner table looked the same as it always had: polished wood, neatly folded napkins, warm plates arranged with care. I had helped set it, moving quietly, hoping that tonight would feel normal, hoping my father would look at me the way he used to, before everything became about appearances and importance. Dad sat at the head of the table, straight, backed, confident. Beside him was Marian, his girlfriend, the lawyer. She wore elegance like armor, her voice calm and assured, every word sounding like it belonged in a courtroom. My father leaned toward her when she spoke, nodding, smiling as if her thoughts were gold. I waited for a pause. When it came, I spoke. I got confirmation today. I said carefully, the project I've been working on, it's finally moving forward. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. Not now, he said, waving his hand slightly. Marian had a long day. Marian smiled politely, the kind of smile that never quite reaches the eyes. It's fine, she said, though she didn't look at me either. My words sat unfinished in the air. The conversation flowed right past me. Dad praised her career, her discipline, how impressive it was that she handled such high-profile cases. He laughed at her jokes, asked questions, listened in a way I hadn't felt from him in years. I tried again, softer this time. It's something I've been building for months. I thought. Dad sighed, finally meeting my eyes, and there was impatience in his stare. You need to understand something, he said. Marian's work is important. What you're doing it can wait. Important, the word burned. Marian shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable now, but she didn't correct him. She didn't defend me. She simply took another sip of her drink, as if I were background noise. After dinner, I followed my father into the kitchen. My chest felt tight, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Why do you talk to me like that? I asked. I just wanted you to listen. He rubbed his forehead, tired, annoyed. You're still figuring your life out. He said, Marian doesn't have time for distractions. You need to be more realistic. Distractions. That was when something inside me cracked quietly, cleanly. I nodded, because arguing wouldn't change his mind. I went to my room and sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. I didn't cry for long. Instead, I made a promise to myself. If my father couldn't see my worth one day, the world would. After that dinner, something shifted between my father and me, not loudly, not in a way anyone else would notice, but the warmth was gone. I stopped trying to fill the space with explanations. I stopped sharing small victories or asking for advice. Silence became easier than rejection. My father mistook it for obedience. Mornings started earlier. I would wake before the house stirred, working while the sky was still dark. Nights stretched longer, my desk lamp glowing while everyone else slept. I learned quickly that dreams don't survive on motivation alone. They survive on discipline. There were days I failed so badly I wanted to quit. Days when doubt wrapped itself around my chest and whispered that my father might be right. But I kept going. Marian remained a constant presence in the house, sharp and composed. She spoke in legal terms, in deadlines and negotiations. When she spoke to me, it was always polite, distant, like I was a junior employee rather than a person. Sometimes she'd ask, still working on that thing, with a smile that carried no curiosity. My father echoed her tone. You should think about a backup plan. He said one evening, Marian understands success. You could learn a lot from her if you paid attention. I nodded. I always nodded. What I didn't tell him was how many times I had started over, how many doors had closed before one cracked open. I didn't tell him about the mentor who took a chance on me, or the nights I studied until my eyes burned. I didn't tell him about the fear, the kind that hits when you realize you're building something with no safety net. Some nights, I wondered if proving myself was worth losing my father. But then I remembered the way he'd looked through me at that dinner table. How easily he'd chosen someone else's importance over my voice. So I built in the shadows. Every rejection hardened me. Every small win stitched me back together. I learned how to speak with confidence, how to walk into rooms without shrinking. I learned that validation feels better when it comes from within. The house stayed the same, but I didn't. They saw me less, assumed I was drifting, failing quietly. Marian grew more confident, my father more impressed with her world. They didn't realize that while they were looking forward, I was laying a foundation beneath their feet. One night, as I closed my laptop after another long session, I caught my reflection in the dark screen. Tired eyes, steady posture, I finally understood something. Being underestimated wasn't a weakness, it was an advantage. The invitation arrived in my inbox on an ordinary morning, hidden between unread messages and quiet routines. A formal confirmation, a schedule, a reminder of where I needed to be and when. I read it twice, then once more, just to be sure. My hands were steady, but my chest felt light, almost unreal. The conference was one my father had mentioned casually weeks earlier. A major legal and business event, high profile, invitation only. He'd spoken about it with pride because Marian was involved in a partnership that could elevate her career even further. Neither of them knew I would be there. The venue was polished glass and soft lighting, the kind of place that made people stand straighter. I arrived early, dressed simply, blending into the quiet professionalism of the room. From a distance, I saw them. My father walking beside Marian, his expression proud, attentive. He adjusted his jacket, laughed at something she said, completely at ease in her world. For a moment an old ache surfaced, then it passed, the program moved smoothly. Speakers were introduced. Applause came and went. I sat calmly, listening, waiting. When the host stepped onto the stage to announce the final collaboration of the evening, the room fell into an expectant hush. This partnership, he said, represents innovation, resilience, and forward thinking. The screen behind him lit up. My name appeared in bold letters, centered, unmistakable. There was a beat of silence. Then murmurs rippled through the audience. I stood. From the corner of my eye, I saw Marian freeze. Her confident posture stiffened, her face draining of color as she stared at the screen, then searched the room. My father turned slowly, confusion etched across his face, until his eyes found mine. Recognition hit him like a wave. I walked toward the stage, each step measured, calm, no rush, no hesitation. Applause grew louder, filling the space where doubt once lived. I didn't look away. I didn't look down. On stage, I shook hands, spoke clearly, professionally. I outlined the work, the vision, the months of effort behind it. My voice didn't shake, it carried. From where I stood, I could see them clearly. Marian's expression had cracked composure replaced with disbelief. She whispered something to my father, but he didn't respond. He couldn't take his eyes off me, the child he had dismissed, the distraction he had underestimated. I finished, nodded to the host, and stepped back as the applause rose again. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt free, because in that moment I realized I hadn't come there to prove them wrong. I had come there because I belonged. The room slowly emptied after the applause faded, conversations buzzing with excitement and curiosity. People approached me with handshakes, compliments, questions about the future. I answered politely, professionally, still grounded in the calm that had carried me through the stage. The noise felt distant, like it belonged to another version of me. When I finally stepped away, my father was waiting. He stood near the exit, hands clasped tightly, his confidence gone. For the first time in years, he looked uncertain, smaller, even. Marian was a few steps behind him, her posture rigid, her eyes avoiding mine. I didn't know. My father said quietly as I approached, "Why didn't you tell me?" I studied his face. There was regret there, but also confusion, like he couldn't understand how this had happened without his permission. "You told me my place," I said gently. My voice held no anger, so I stayed in it. "I just built something better." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing he could say that would reach back and fix the nights he dismissed me, the dinner where I became invisible. Some apologies come too late, not because they aren't sincere, but because the person you hurt has already healed. Marian finally spoke. "I didn't realize," she said, her voice carefully controlled. I nodded once, that was all. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need her approval. Her silence had spoken loudly enough before. As I walked toward the doors, my father called my name. I paused, not turning around. "I'm proud of you," he said. I believed him, and for a moment, that younger part of me, the one who had waited for those words, felt seen. But I also knew something had changed forever. Pride no longer defined my worth. Outside, the night air was cool, grounding. I took a deep breath and felt something loosen inside my chest. The weight I'd carried for years, the need to be chosen, to be validated, finally slipped away. The revenge hadn't been humiliation. It hadn't been sharp words or public confrontation. It had been growth. It had been becoming someone they couldn't ignore, not because I demanded attention, but because I earned presence. I had walked into a room where I once would have shrunk, and I had stood tall without asking permission. I walked away that night knowing something powerful. Some people only learn your value once you stop trying to prove it to them. And the sweetest victories don't shout. They simply move on.